Gali, mera gali spera gali nikta, no matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be. Thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. I'm so happy I didn't do a post-game show yesterday. I've had time to chill out, relax, put my anger into something else. And today we're going to dissect it all in a calm way with one of our favourites. Let's rock and roll, squaddies.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
It's the day after the night before. I actually had, again, like the Manchester City match, I had to rearrange 5 different thumbnails. We went from popcorn football to pooped football last night. Started off like this, Magpies humiliate Gunners. Then I thought, is that a little bit harsh? So I went to Magpies destroy Gunners. And then I just settled on Magpies demolish Gunners. Welcome back to Squad Central, former Luton Town Gaffer and San Diego Wave Gaffer, and consultant to many big clubs around the world, Mr. Paul Buckle. But
hey, Soph, how you doing? Nice to see you.
It's a loaded question this morning, Paul. Welcome, squaddies. At ease. Thanks for making us part of your day. I texted you and Rebecca yesterday and said that was embarrassing. And Rebecca's response was, sorry, Soph, I'd love to be in a semi-final of a cup. But you and I were messaging yesterday and I was thinking, managing at different levels brings different stress and different pressure, right? And I wanted to kind of start off with Mikel Arteta versus Eddie Howe. We've talked on this show a lot about teams that have your number, managers that have your number. But Paul, this is the 3rd game we've played against Newcastle. We've scored no goals. And they really have kind of made us look like schoolboys. And they've appeared to be these gigantic, strategic, tactical men. Can you talk me through a little bit? You know, Eddie Howe, it's his 2nd final in 3 years. I don't think English managers get enough love. But what's your take on the Eddie Howe versus Mikel Arteta situation and how he just can't crack him?
Well, it's an interesting one. Sometimes, Soph, that can happen. You know, bogey teams as a player, and you can have bogey teams with a manager, and sometimes a manager can get. I think Eddie maybe as well. I don't know this for sure, of course, but he's still trying to get to the very top. You know, I think you would see Arsenal as a bigger club than Newcastle. I say that with the greatest respect. And Eddie is, you know, probably got a point to prove still, Sophie. So maybe he's got that extra bit in him. I think that the preparation time both managers had was short, and I was absolutely shocked at the performance, and I was shocked at the start of the game, Arsenal. And again, the job of the manager, the biggest thing for the manager after a win, a draw, a defeat, and everything was there for Arsenal. I said to the team, I don't know what the strategy was, but certainly 2-0 is a line. I've been there. I've played as a player in 2-legged games. I've managed in them. And in the game, I don't think Arsenal ever stayed in the game. I think over the 2 legs, not scoring a goal, but yeah, getting back to that rivalry. Yeah, Eddie's been around a long time, Soph. You know, I managed against him in League Two.
Oh, you did when
Cup game. Yeah,
when he was at Bournemouth were coming up.
Yes, he was at Bournemouth. Jason with him. We drew them in the cup. And we played them away at Bournemouth, and we beat him on penalties. We went to penalties and we beat him. But yeah, I mean, Eddie's had a lot of experience. You know, he's probably one of the only managers I can think of, other than maybe a Chris Wilder, that's come all the way up, you know, sort of the lower leagues, all the way up. So if you look at, and I've said this before with managers, he's had
Hey,
a
Paul,
lot more
one
than
second.
Mikel.
You're saying too many great. Your audio's. I mean, it might be the headphones. It's duck. Yeah, might be even better without them.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better, because this is good stuff. I actually
Sorry.
didn't know that you managed against Eddie. I know you've managed against a lot of great managers.
Yeah, no, I've had the pleasure. And Eddie, what I wasn't happy about though, there's always something a down to win in the game. He went and then bought Ewan O'Kane off us because Ewan played so well against Bournemouth in midfield. They went and bought Ewan. But no, I've been up against Eddie Howe, and when you look at his career, Sophie, he has come all the way through. He's had thousands of experiences. And I think that comes into it as a manager. We've spoken on this show before about how important air miles are, experiences are. And I think he was really, really well prepped. I mean, we can talk about the goals. He was really well prepped. And it's the biggest part of being a manager is having your team ready for the game, okay? Physically, mentally. We saw Arsenal were more than ready for City. We saw a Newcastle team that got beat and looked very tired, was 1-0 up. And that's why when I saw that, I was thinking I would be jumping all over that as a coach, right? As a head coach, I'd be saying, right, keep it tight really early on. Keep it really tight, and the doubt will creep into Newcastle because they've just lost at home. They just conceded 2 goals from being ahead. But Arsenal never gave themselves that chance. And I think there's a lot of things that come into it, but certainly it seems to me that Eddie was able to prepare his team. He had one day more than Mikel, but he was able to prepare his team for this second leg, which, you know, you could tell by the atmosphere how much it meant to the Geordie supporters. And I think they knew, and it was credit to Arsenal, I think they knew that they had to bring every part of their game to do this to Arsenal. And they did on the night because it was a real brilliant atmosphere.
Before I get on to like the moment that changed the game, I wanted to ask you this too, because I know you've experienced it, and sometimes a manager stands helpless on the sidelines, right? But how do you go from like an all-out, guns blazing performance against Manchester City, and then a few days later, it's not that I don't care that we lost. I care in the manner of which we lost. We were spineless. We were toothless. We didn't create anything. The chance that we did have, we completely whiffed on it. It seems like 2 of our best players right now are 17 and 18 years old. The senior players kind of, you know, the mentality, the inconsistency to be a great team. Great teams show up no matter what. And they may lose, but they still show up. How do you equate? You talk about preparation, and Eddie was more prepared. They lost to Fulham. They're embarrassed at home to Fulham. People were talking about how they've conceded 4 goals to Bournemouth, 2 goals to Fulham at home. They're there for the taking. And yet we don't even show up. How does that happen, Paul?
Well, again, as a manager, Sophie, it's your job to put the belief in the players. That's your job. It's the biggest part. Your team's got to be ready when they go on the field. And you've got to be constantly watching the players. I mean, the behaviours of some of the chaps at Arsenal, I mean, I know it's a big win, but it's only 3 points. And I think the best teams, the Ferguson teams, the Guardiola teams that have gone and been serial winners, they almost take that in their stride. I still think that looked like Arsenal, it was a big hurdle for Arsenal that they've overcome, where it should have been just, you know, yeah, we've given an inconsistent Manchester City team what they deserve, right? I don't think it lent itself to over celebration. I think that's always dangerous in football. I've never encouraged my teams to over celebrate, especially with games coming thick and fast, right? Because even when a goal scored, Sophie, in a game, the arousal levels, I've said this before, you celebrate, of course. It's why we say to players, I would say walk back, get all the team in together, recompose yourself, because it takes something out of you in that moment, using a goal as an analogy. Whereas in the bigger picture, when you're talking about winning a game, but having to go to Newcastle in that second leg, you want to, if Mikel had felt that, yeah, you want to celebrate it after the game in the dressing room, but he really got to cut a knife through it. Say, right, we need to take that now. You know, you can hear my voice going up, but then because I've been there, I've been as a manager. I remember in the playoffs, so because there was always 2 legs, it's never over, and we won 2-0. We had to go away, forget Piston or somewhere, but it's a big game. You're talking about getting back into the Football League, and I wouldn't let, and the cameras came in because there was cameras at that time, and I wouldn't let us celebrate. I didn't want to take anything out of us because we hadn't done anything. And Arsenal hadn't done anything after that City game. And I think that's where you can draw on experience. You can look back if you've made a mistake before as a manager where you've got too high. Okay. And I think going back to Eddie, he probably was able to recover, lean on a lot of experience, an awful lot of experience. So he's been a manager for a long time. And maybe Mikel wasn't able to. I'm saying maybe because I don't know. But it shocked me. I sat up, I was like, right, 12 o'clock, watch the game. I was looking forward to this game because I thought Arsenal will come out and they'll bring this back. This will go to extra time. And it was a real worry and a real concern that the way they performed. And yeah, it wasn't good enough. I was about to say, but I don't think it was good enough in a semi-final. You know, building on the momentum of Sunday, something has gone really wrong in between time. So whether it's the manager, the players, or both, you know, because the second, I mean, both goals we can talk about, there was a bit of a complacency there.
Oh God, yeah, and we're going to talk about that. You know, also the Odegaard chance, right? I mean, maybe not nine times out of 10, and people talk about it's on his weaker foot, but you've got to bury those chances. And I'm not here to kill Odegaard, but people kill Kai Havertz all the time. And you're the captain of the team. And that chance was so bad because immediately after they broke and destroyed they were slicing through our centre backs and our midfield, you know, like humble pie. And as a manager, when you're standing on the sideline at that point, Mikel did say in his presser that was the game gone. And it felt like the players felt they didn't fight at all after that situation in the game, Paul. Mikel must have felt helpless from the sidelines. But Super Kev used to say on the show all the time, it's the players. And my God, last night, those players just capitulated after that scenario. Odegaard misses, Isak whacks it across hits the crossbar, and I think it was Murphy who finished. At that point, the manager's kind of like, what's he going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times in games where you think we needed to score that. That was our moment. And that's the part of and he should have scored. I mean, he's you know, this is it at professional level. At the highest level, at professional level, you're paid to put the ball in the net. Just like Saliba's paid to keep the ball out the net, and you know, Raya's got to keep goal. They're the basic fundamentals of the game. You know, it's a team sport, and you're all in positions, and yeah, we all help out in different ways, but that's that's what you brought to Arsenal for, and he's got to score that. He has to finish that. He would know that himself. I didn't really touching on it there. I don't think Mikel was that animated. Maybe the Sunday game took a lot out of him and he couldn't recover, right? Because he's normally really animated. And when the camera goes across, you didn't see as much. I didn't see as much anyway. I didn't see it from the players. I saw it from Trippier. I mean, obviously he's going to have a bit in him, I would imagine, playing against Arsenal, right? But I really saw an urgency about the players of Newcastle, right? There was like a fear factor of throwing the game away. They seem to be on at each other. I didn't see that from the Arsenal players. I didn't see. There was a great chance to pull that game back, a great chance, and they missed the real opportunity. But in a game, and I was speaking to a former colleague this morning actually about it, and I was saying, when you're on the field, you look for inspiration from each other. You know, you're looking for your captain, you're looking for your leaders on the pitch so that lay a marker down against they win their duels against their player, and it can lift you. And I didn't see that from any Arsenal player. I don't know if you did, you know,
now,
or whether the fans did.
You know what, Paul? People may not like me saying this, and because they're like, of course they care. They're professionals. You know what? There's some conferences or film festivals I have to go to that I have a little apathy towards. I enjoy the Cannes Film Festival, Toronto, but sometimes all the ones in the middle are like, oh God, do we really have to do this? It's human nature in any job to love certain things that you do and not love some other things. No one likes admin work either. And to me last night, as an Arsenal fan, I was exceptionally disappointed because I've always said on the show, and we've talked about how winning the League Cup will galvanize this team to taste what it's like to win together, to go on for the remaining 3 months in the Premier League and feel like, my God, if it feels this good to win the Carabao Cup, can you imagine how good it feels to win the Premier League? And I think there was apathy last night. I believe that we've become snobs towards the domestic cups. Mikel's record since he has won the FA Cup, and I'm not calling for his head or any player's head. I'm just calling it as I see it, Paul. And Eddie Howe, 2 finals in 3 years. Mikel Arteta, 2 semi-finals, right? Hasn't gotten to a final since he won it with a team he inherited. To me, last night, it smacked of, you know what? We've got bigger fish to fry. And Arsenal have become a coulda, shoulda, woulda club right now. And they also are trying to land on the stars before they've reached the moon, Paul.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I think you've nailed it. And no one could argue with that. And this is how quickly football changes. It looks, you know, when I'm hearing you speak, it's like want to rest in that glory a bit longer. 2 days is not enough, right? And this is when you're paid the big money or you're not paid the big money. There's professional pride at stake. And again, speaking with former colleagues, when your career's gone and, you know, you've had a 20-year career as a player, it's resilience. And they needed to find some resilience up at Newcastle. They needed to go up there and dig in. For the first 20 minutes, I think they needed to shut up shop. And it just still... It just wasn't good enough. It was weak. And for the centre-backs, especially Saliba, he didn't look right. We've spoken highly enough about this Arsenal team, and I've been a big advocate of Mikel, as you know. I mean, I love the way they play, and I still do. But I would imagine alarm bells are ringing now all around, because it's now leading towards, what would it be if Arsenal don't win something? Would it be 5 years, just the FA Cup? 5 seasons?
Yeah. He got to the semi-final of the Europa League 2 and lost to Emery, which was also a gut punch at the time. And I know that, you know, I like to bring up a lot of what Kev used to say, because I know you guys were in agreement. Like, he didn't buy the fatigue thing. Whenever I used to bring it up, he would shut me down. He's like, Soph, no, they are professional footballers. They've got to play. They've got to find a way. And I know the modern game, there's a lot more games. Saliba last night looked like Mustafi. It was so shocking, right? Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, is it a case of, because we've seen him one-on-one with Haaland. We've seen him in Champions League play against top players. We've seen him at the World Cup really shine. Was it just a case of an off night for him, or is Isak just that good? And does Isak, was it proven also last night against one of the best central defenders in the world, Paul, that Isak actually has so much more to his game than Haaland?
Yeah, I mean, he's allowed a bad night. That can happen. You know, you can, sometimes as a manager, you can dig too deep. I've dug too deep myself before when it's been pretty obvious we're allowed an off night. I just think the magnitude of the game and how big the game was to us. And if Arsenal are being snobs, then they better go and win either the Champions League or the Premier League, by the way. It just didn't match up with the occasion. If you're stepping out there as a player in that atmosphere, that tells you straight away. So if you're not up for it, and sometimes in human nature, you're not, you need
to get some cold water on your face, or you need to do something, or you need your teammate to say, you know, go and win that. I didn't. They needed something. I didn't see it. I didn't see it from Rice. If you played in midfield, and Arsenal dodged a bullet early in the game with the disallowed goal, that was the warning sign. That should have been a huge warning sign to them. Normally, you see this Arsenal team look around and you'd see them animated, right? You would see that normally. Now, you know, you've seen Van Dijk do it a lot in the Liverpool team. When that ball goes up and Saliba, that ball can go up. I tell you now, that ball can go up 50 times from the goalkeeper. With Saliba coming onto it, that's not his strength. He's not a target man like a Haaland, right? Isak's more on the shoulder and he's good in the box. He's got to go and win that. There's no and Super Kev, you're looking down now, and I'm sure he'd be agreeing with me 100%. That forward would have been expecting Saliba to come through, do the basics, win it well, push it back over the midfield line, and now, you know, Partey and Rice are facing Newcastle's goal. It didn't happen. He gets bumped, he gets spun, they get in, and the rest is history. They're the basic fundamentals that show your opponent, show your teammates, we mean business. I'm going to do my part on the night and make sure my house is in order. And I tell you what, when your back line, especially two centre-backs, so when there's a decision there and they're not winning their headers and not winning their duels, it becomes very difficult as a midfield player. I played in there long enough to know that you are dependent on them central defenders being dominant so you can get on the front foot. And Arsenal was never, after that, I think Newcastle grew in stature, they grew in confidence and thought, you know, really and truthfully, they're here for the taking.
So I don't think that we lost last night because of Kai Havertz. I think we could have easily lost, he missed a terrible chance against Manchester City. He is our top goal scorer, but a lot of fans go by the eye test. I'm not an XG girl. I don't care about any of that. I've backed Kai from day one. I think he's a misunderstood player. And I actually think Mikel is setting him up to fail. He's asking him to do way too much. He's got too much on his shoulders. He becomes the scapegoat. Martinelli, I feel a little bit has become that this season too. Tracking back, winning duels, doing this, doing that. We're such a stat-driven team. Win your duels, do this with your partnerships. I get all that in modern football, Paul. But the instinct to just play seems to be sucked out of this team at times, which I think creates those inconsistencies. Now, some of the listeners were like, please ask Paul about Kai Havertz. If Kai Havertz was your player, Paul, what would your mindset be as a manager? Because some will say, well, Isak put that team on his shoulders last night as a forward. And I'm thinking, well, Isak was absolutely given delicious balls last night from the flanks, from the midfield, from the back. Havertz was feeding on scraps. Now, is his control, was it all over the place last night? Yes. Should that be the case for a player of his quality? No. Kai Havertz is your player. What are you thinking?
Well, I wasn't a fan of him. But you've won me over with him and he's won me over. I think he's a class act. I think that he can create goals. He can create space for other players. I think obviously he can score goals, but I don't think that he's an out-and-out goal scorer. I don't think he's your 25 a season goal scorer, which Arsenal have lacked. I think that's a big red flag for the club, actually, and for the recruitment team, that they've not been able to go and get a player like a Watkins. I'm looking at it saying, imagine Watkins up there with Havertz. Imagine Isak.
And Ollie, because of your Brentford connection.
Well, absolutely.
You used to play for the club. You used to play for the club, and you're close to everyone over there.
Well, it's my age, so yeah. Ollie came through the ranks at Exeter. I remember speaking to Steve Perriman about him, and he was like, Bucks, he's the real deal. He played on the left, they then put him down the middle. But Steve knew he was going to be a top player. And I actually recommended him to Palace back then. The rest is obviously history, as we know of Ollie. But when you're putting a team together, you're looking at what Havertz can bring. He's brilliant at controlling the ball, holding the ball up, and he's excellent. He's always shows for the ball. When you've got a player like that can link it, a little bit like how Villa play when Ollie stays away from the play, and he lets them build
Mm-hmm.
in. And Arsenal don't have that out-and-out threat behind like that. They're quick on the outsides, but that out-and-out pace down the middle that an Isak and a Watkins can bring can change the whole dynamic of the team. Because when you've got that, it keeps the defensive, it keeps the opposition backline really honest. They have to be pushed back. They've got to take the space behind. And then that leaves room for Havertz coming short and Odegaard and all these great players that Arsenal have got. And so I really think that if Havertz had this player with him, you would see an even better Havertz. And I agree, he's having to do everything, really. He's having to be up there scoring the goals. And I think in the game himself, I think when you're struggling like Arsenal were in both legs, I mean, we're talking about both ties. They lost 2-0 on the first one, so you mustn't forget that. You're chasing the game. So the pressure's going to be on the forwards to get themselves, back in the game. And at no point in the two legs did the Arsenal rearguard give the strikers a bit of a break, really. So, it was always up against it. So, no, I like Havertz. I just think Arsenal are lacking an out-and-out striker. It's obvious for me.
Yeah, and he was brought initially as a midfielder, and Archangel just talking about that in our live chat as well. And this is the part where I feel like I get in the modern game you want versatile players, but Arteta has that pep chip a little bit, Paul, where sometimes it's a square peg round hole. It's like playing Xhaka at left back in the semi-final of the Europa League. It's like trying to squeeze Thomas Partey in at right back. I understand we've had injuries. There were a couple of games where he didn't have to play him there. Miles Lewis-Skelly, thank God, he's a midfielder, but he's playing left back, and you would never think that he was a midfielder. So that's working out because of the talent, of the young player as well. And it just seems to me that we always want managers to be adaptable. And I think Mikel's got so much talent. I want you to tell me, have you seen him be adaptable? It always seems like for like versus adaptability. I'm trying to think of a game where in a game he made a substitution or did something that was like, wow. And the squaddies will tell me, but he seems stubborn as well as it being the players.
Well, I think that you can attach stubborn to it where he won't change his principles. So with and without the ball, I think they play a certain way. You don't see like Unai Emery. He'll close the game out on half an hour. I mean, I'm close with Matty Cash's dad, Stuart Cash. And I was like, he watches every game. He goes, Bucks, this manager, when they're 1-0 up with 25 minutes to go, he makes the changes. He's happy with 1-0, right? He's just shuts it up. He doesn't care. He's worked on it. The players know it. They don't need another goal. They're confident that they can see the game out. I don't think Mikel sees it like that. I didn't see, and like I said, being over the two games, Newcastle deserve it because it's over two games. I didn't see Arsenal go on lockdown for the first 25 minutes. There was no rush to try and get back in the game in the first half an hour. I didn't see it. It was just it was open, wasn't it? It was wide open from minute one, the game. So maybe he can do it. I'm sure he can. I'm sure he's seen it. I'm sure he's got a great football brain, but I don't think he wants to do it. I don't think that he wants to change a bit like Pep. But has he had the players at his disposal that Pep's had over Pep's years? And I think it's definitely something to think about. It's a great question, and I think that this is going to be the challenge for himself because it's now do or die in many ways. I know the team's gone away, right? I think the team's gone away, haven't they? Is it Dubai?
Yeah, they're in Dubai right now. They should have sent them to where Rocky trained in Rocky 4 in Russia. They deserved like cold winter training, not warm winter training.
Well, it did well for them last season.
It did.
If I remember right. So let's hope they come back. Hit
sooner.
the ground running.
It was sooner last season too. It's a little later now, and obviously expecting Liverpool to trip up doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but it yet could. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got into it a little bit on social media with some fans in a good way. We were having healthy discussions, and I posted something in our community page where I'm like, on a night of football, I, as a fan, I'm not blaming something that didn't happen, right? So I know you've got your executive hat on too, having worked with teams in a lot of different areas, and your associations with Brentford and Palace, you know, at that director of football level and being a gaffer. There's no doubt Mikel Arteta is, you know, not happy with the fact that we didn't get reinforcements. I also kind of think that Mikel Arteta is the type of manager that doesn't want just any player coming in. And he's also such a control freak that he doesn't just want any player come in to disrupt his dressing room, character, DNA, player profile. All of that really matters to him. Edu leaves. We've got a kind of makeshift director of football. Do you think that hurt us in the January transfer window? Also, though, do you agree with me that last night is 11 v 11? It's not, oh, we didn't sign Sesko. Oh, and I know those players, you don't know if those players can come in and have an immediate impact. The game was lost in the first leg anyway. I just see it as 11 v 11, where we've pretty much got our best team out, Paul, barring Saka and Benjamin White, who would be playing, and Timber would be playing on the left. Miles Lewis-Skelly, can't argue him being in the team right now. 11 v 11 is where we lost. But the transfer window, I get why some fans are bringing that up as a major sticking point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's twofold. I think it's a worry that they haven't replaced him to support Mikel, you know, with signings. That's a big job. I mean, you can't be a head coach and do that as well. It's impossible. Right, that needs to be brought to you right at the very end. I mean, there's so much work that goes in to signing players now. That's a completely separate job, and it's a much needed job, because I think maybe what the fans might be saying is that if they had had that, it might be different, and at least we couldn't use that as an excuse then, because Arsenal should have a striker by now, in my opinion. I think that's the job of the recruitment and of the sporting director. That's what his job's not on the field. His job's not on the training field like Mikel's is every day, and the games and the tactics. He's got enough to do. His job's to go and keep putting players fitting the profile that Mikel wants, has the competencies in the areas, and go and try and sign them players. And if they've exhausted every avenue and can't find the players, then so be it. I find that very difficult to believe at a club like Arsenal. So if you want Watkins, go and get Watkins. What was it, 60 million that they offered? I mean,
we put in a bid for 40, and of course they're not going to.
No, you know. But your job. If I've got the money from the owners, right, and you're the manager, so far, I'm going to go and get that player for you. I say Watkins is available. It doesn't matter to the manager really what the money's. It did for me at Torquay because I was in charge of the finances and everything, right? But you do need that conduit, so to speak, between the board and the manager. You need that moving on to the field as well, which I know to be an important role, that when he's supporting you, when you've won a game, drawn a game, you've got someone to lean on, because not always the staff that are around you are the right people to talk to after the game. You need someone sometimes a bit higher level that's up there and seen it through a different lens. So that role is critical. And look at how well Forest are doing. And I've seen that firsthand with Ross Wilson. I don't know if I've mentioned Ross on here before, but I worked with Ross Wilson at Southampton when Ralph Hasselhoff was the head coach. Worked very, very closely and got to see Ross work, and I stayed great friends with him since. Actually, I was so impressed, Soph, with how he worked within the club at Southampton, and he's done well wherever he's been. I've watched his journey: Huddersfield, Watford, Southampton, and now at Forest. So it's a crucial role. It's a crucial role, especially in the top clubs now. And I think it is something that's lacking and much needed. And if you've done everything and you've done everything you can, at least then if you do go out like Arsenal have, you can say, well, we tried everything. I think when there's gaps, it's always going to leave room for people to question it.
I'm going a little off script now, but this is such a good conversation, especially when you mention Ross. And do you think an ownership that forked out 100 million for Declan Rice, whatever the model is, kids in chat, I know we play on a sustainable, pitch when it comes to fiscal responsibility and stuff, but 100 million for Declan Rice. I find it hard to believe that the owners, if Mikel wanted Ollie Watkins, I think that Mikel would get Ollie Watkins because Ollie Watkins wanted and wants to come to Arsenal so badly. I think something is happening in between the owners and Mikel. You could call it, maybe, Jobsworth thinking too much of, well, I'm not spending that money, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, or just not having the prowess to convince and make that deal happen, Paul. What do you I think if Mikel really wanted Ollie Watkins, I mean, look, Villa is a whole other thing, but I want you to take me into that space because now when things aren't going right, it's all on the owners again, right? When things are going really well, Mikel's the Don. When things aren't going well, it's the owners. Yeah. I don't know why there's no lens or microscope on what the manager's doing, how he's approaching games, how he's managing players. I don't know why there's no microscope on other players other than Kai Havertz and Martinelli and Trossard. I don't get that. And I don't think that the owners are the worst owners in the league as some fans think. I believe that the truth is somewhere in the middle. What does your experience tell you?
Well, without knowing the full ins and outs, I've obviously worked at 6 clubs now, and you get when the board are backing yourself, right? You do get a honeymoon period. I think Mikel may have lost it. They may have, and I say in this, I don't know it. They may have lost a bit of faith because if they're sitting there, if we're a board now, right? And I was trying to look it through what a board would see it like. So I always laugh now with with Alex, who was my chairman at Torquay. It's like, what did you used to talk about? And of course, when you're losing games or you've lost a couple, they see it differently. So as a manager, you've got to really know when you can, you're strong. When you're strong, your stock's high, you get more normally, right? If Watkins was available and ticking the boxes of, I think he's an Arsenal fan, Ollie, right?
Yep,
and what's been going
time.
on? What's been going on with him at Villa, right? He got left out just of late. Timing was perfect to go and get him. Timing was that for me, because I'm sure Emery would have that conversation, do you want to go? And I think he may have said yes, right? And then it's just up to Arsenal to provide the money and then satisfy Ollie with his personal terms. But maybe it suited Arsenal. Maybe if you dig deep now, that they're saying maybe the league's gone. Maybe they're saying they can't see Liverpool losing this, and there might be other players available at the end of the season. Are we going to win the Champions League? It's a long shot. So maybe they're saying, and we've seen this before, where clubs have allowed a manager to spend a fortune, and then he's gone. I'm not saying I want Mikel gone, but if he doesn't win anything this year and we're the board, we've got a decision to make. And when a new manager comes in, Soph, you want them to have a chance of having their own players. And this would be the dilemma for Arsenal, whether to stick or twist, because they're all now Mikel's players.
Yeah,
they're all playing in a certain way, right? You're talking 100 million on Rice. That's Mikel's player really now. I mean, of course, Rice will play for any manager that comes in, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
And I think you can look at that and say, I'd be amazed if Mikel didn't want that reinforcement of Ollie. I mean, come on, you take a striker now 100% to give you even a fighting chance of winning the Champions League. I mean, it's arguable the Champions League is more doable than the Premier League.
Correct.
And I wouldn't put it past Arsenal.
Correct.
But I'll tell you now, if you had Ollie Watkins in the building now, would you be happier? Or
I would be. I would be 100%. 100% I would be.
And sorry, so they set a precedent, spending that much money on a midfielder. And look at what Rice has done for Arsenal. He's been amazing. I think that we're used to seeing all the money go on the strikers. That's what happens. Everybody knows that. Players know that. We all know that. The strikers are the ones that cost the money. Is Ollie expensive at 70, 80, 85, even 90 million? Is that expensive? I don't think so. Given that he's a proven goal scorer, and I had this conversation. He's scored goals wherever he's been, and I think this Arsenal team can provide him with even more chances than those teams have given him. So I think that was a miss.
Yeah. I do too, because I don't believe that was just to bring a body in. I believe that was, quality player who could have added something to this team. The problem is, again, Arsenal, this is why I feel like we've become a little coulda, shoulda, woulda, in that they're thinking in the summer, Sesko. Well, 2 summers ago, you had the chance to sign Isak from Real Sociedad and you whiffed on it. And you're not signing. I really want this conversation about signing Isak to end. Because it's like I don't understand why Arsenal fans even think that we would sign him and that we're in the driver's seat when there's teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona and PSG and Manchester City and Manchester United and Liverpool and all these Bayern Munichs. I know they don't spend as much, but it's just ridiculous to think. It's like I think the narrative needs to change to, I wish we could find a player of his profile. Well, we whiffed on him. And I agree with someone who wrote in, can the Cronkies at least fix the seats in the stadium? That's where I think they need to up their game as owners. But it's the same people who've been saying, oh, Mikel spent 850 million and we haven't won anything. And so whose fault is it, Mikel's or the Cronkies? Because they've given him the money that you're complaining about. So I don't know. It's like one thing one day and another thing the next day. All I know, Paul, is that we're behind the curve in the Premier League. You talk about the Champions League. People laugh at us when we say we've got more chance of winning the Champions League. I mean, you've got City and Real Madrid. One of them is going to go out. Bayern Munich seem to have found their feet a little bit again. Inter Milan look like the strongest team in the tournament. Barcelona look absolutely flying. What's your parting shot here for the squaddies? How do you see this? Because it's so up and down, right? Now they've gone to Dubai feeling low, but maybe we're feeling low and they're feeling high. Maybe they didn't really kind of care about the Carabao Cup semi-final. Like I said, got to keep winning in the league. The fine margins might not, be there for us to make up the difference. Are Liverpool going to crumble? How do you see it all? What's your take?
Well, I think the break will be much needed. It'll be much welcomed if you put yourself in the position of the players and the staff. It's very difficult when it's so up and down. The emotions must be, so difficult to control right now. That high from City, that low from Newcastle. But maybe, as you say, it's maybe not as big a low as we think. I totally agree with you that momentum's everything. Go for everything. Try and win everything. Maybe it's not so. Maybe we're going to see this team come back after the break. I know it's later than last year, as you rightly said. Come back fresh, hit the ground running. They put a couple of performances in so far, like they did against City. The Newcastle thing will be forgotten for now. I mean, the whole thing will be looked at the end of the season. And I think the end of the season, as boring as an answer this is going to be the defining moment for Mikel. Because that's when you're up against it as a manager, where he's been brought into Arsenal to win. It's as simple as that. You've got to win something. And if it's a domestic cup, that the Arsenal fans will take that for a bit. It's not going to go away. The pressure is not going to go away from Mikel and the team, because I think there's a lot of people that want Arsenal to win as well. It's not just yourselves. I said there, I was looking forward to the game. They're brilliant to watch. They look dangerous in the game as well against Newcastle. I must say that. I don't believe that they don't want it. I don't believe they're not trying. I think that Mikel will have to have a good look at himself in this break and see what he can do better. Because, again, every single game, that Arsenal playing so between now and the end of the season, I can guarantee you one thing: the opposition will be up for it. The manager, the fans, the players. So they got to find it now in every game between now and the end of the season. And again, he'll be judged at the end. He will be judged at the end of the season, and he'll be given at the end of this season. So, for one thing, I would say to the Arsenal fans is, Mikel, as a manager, you want to be given a chance. And five seasons, not bad as a manager these days.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if he was Chelsea manager, he wouldn't be here right now. If he was Man United manager, questionable. You know, Man City in the modern day, maybe not. They're above their stations. Maybe Liverpool, he'd still be manager, maybe not. Maybe he's our Brendan Rodgers. Maybe he'll be our Jurgen Klopp. We don't know yet. But football and sports is measured. Also, yes, the journey's important, and he talks a lot about that, Paul. But at some point, you've got to reach the final destination. And, you know, if he ends up winning the Champions League, which is like, I don't know if that's even possible, there'll be a statue built for him outside the Emirates. He'll be the only manager in Arsenal history that has done that. Of course, it's a long shot. I'm tired of us being the dartboard. I'm kind of like switching off social media, the humiliation of everything. It seems like I'm tired of being a victim fan. You know, everyone wants to throw darts at Arsenal, but you know what? We give them the ammo to load the gun. We continually do it to ourselves every season. And at some point, that's got to stop. And whether it's Mikel, you know, he's brought us to a certain point and he can't take us any further, the proof will be in the pudding. So far, proof is there for some Arsenal fans to feel that way. But we allow that. We know that's going to happen. You know, there's a lot of jealousy because of our gold trophy, and we're the only team to have gone unbeaten in the Premier League, and it's the only thing we can brag about, and we can't brag about Europe. There's a lot of different threads and narratives to why. But the only way to shut people up, Paul, is to win something. Arsenal will never regain their respect with anybody outside of Arsenal Football Club until they win something. I think that's the reality.
Yeah, well said. I totally concur with that. I think that the fans really, I mean, they've played their part massively, and the message is keep doing it, because it's not going to be easy time right now for Mikel. And as long as if Mikel wins or doesn't win and leaves at the end of the season or stays, I think all the Arsenal fans can say, well, look, we've made it the very best we can. We haven't got on his back. Just keep supporting. And that's, you know, that's a great thing for a manager when you're sitting there on the side and your fans stick with you. I think that's huge. So that would be my message. Keep believing in what's been a crazy season, thinking that, you know, Manchester City was going to be the hurdle to get over. And then you got Liverpool, who are showing so that you can still, in this modern day where it is about play, have some pragmatism about your play and your style of play. And just, I think they're a perfect example right now. It doesn't matter how they win, they just win.
Yeah. And that's the key. Just win, baby, as Al Davis used to say. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. There's been a great conversation. Almost 200 of you in live chat. Please hit the like button on the way out. More of you joining now. I've actually got a pop off and I've got another show to do, which is not football related. So I'm looking forward to that, Paul. What are you up to? Let everyone know where they can find you. And it is here, Paul, Buckle_Paul at Instagram. How are you doing? What have you got coming up?
Well, Rebecca's, because of the FA Cup, Rebecca's off this weekend. So we're going to take advantage and we're heading to Palm Springs late this evening until Sunday. So some family time together. Although I think already I'm driving her mad. So yeah, and I'm gonna watch your arch enemy today, which will be a fascinating game.
I have a horrible feeling that his I only win things in my second season, whether it's the FA Cup or this one, might come true. I'm praying not. But all the squaddies send their love to you. Have a great time with Rebecca. There's a tournament going down there if you're interested. There's LA Galaxy, LAFC, the Coachella tournament. So I'm sure the little guy might want to catch some of that.
Yes, we're meeting up with Phil Neville. Actually, me and Ted are going to go and watch training in Portland Timbers tomorrow, and then some games at the weekend, and then the Fulham weekend. It's the NWSL pre-season, so we're heading down there to watch the Wave.
Brilliant.
Other teams, yeah. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Or maybe next time we could get Phil on the show with you, and we'll get a double gaffer chat.
Sounds good.
Paul, thank you so much, squaddies. I am back tomorrow live for an extra show. It's going to be a bit of a different one, seeing as you guys kind of into the Zubimendi thing, and of course Nico Williams. We're going to talk to Graham Hunter, the great Graham Hunter, who is going to come in and chat with us about Zubimendi, Nico Williams, the future of Arsenal from the La Liga candidates. So please don't miss that. It is at 4 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. UK time. You can ask Graham anything. Until then, tell your loved ones you love them at Ease Squaddies, and thanks, Mr. Buckle.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hold on, end stream. Where is it? Come on. Doesn't want to go.